for a quick hearing and in 341. It shouldn't be too long, but I'll just tell you before we get started, brevity will be your friend today. And I don't want anybody to leave off anything that's significant, but it's going to be a long day, and my guess is we're going to be here till 5 or 6 o'clock. And I didn't make up the order of who's going to be heard, so you think we ought to wait till we get one or two more here?
Probably just a minute.
And I'm gonna wait just a minute. I don't want to hold the hearing completely by myself. There should be a few people showing up here pretty quick. Unfortunately, nobody's eating lunch or anything either. We've been in session all day, so I'm sure some of them are going to grab a sandwich or something before they come over. But we're on hold once again. I hope they check, make sure nobody had any rocks. Came through the gate.
The sheriff's chairman.
Yeah. One other thing here before we get started, if you have a universal expenditure, if you look right beside the number, just be a little S there, which means everybody, it's pay raise or something that everybody's going to get. There's no need to explain that. Just bypass it. Everybody got a copy of the agenda? Know what order? Okay. Anybody know any good jokes? Tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna start this thing by myself. I don't know when anybody else is getting over here. I was just notified that our meeting over for the full Appropriations Committee has been moved to 3 o'clock, so that gives us a little time. I understand that one of the judges has a hearing here pretty quick from the accountability court, so I'm gonna go ahead and move them up to the first part and hear them first, so.
Thank you, Chairman.
Sure.
We're taking to heart brevity.
Well, the other one's my son, and I didn't want to do that by myself. I think my wife would be good with it, but probably nobody else.
It's a slightly different, but more august audience than I thought we'd get, but I appreciate your time in considering our request and our discussion about accountability courts. I'm Robert McBurney. I am a Superior Court judge here in Fulton County, and I do, in fact, have a hearing at 2:30 that I need to get back to. I am accompanied by Taylor Jones, who's the Executive Director of the Council of Accountability Court Judges, and of course you know Judge Cole, who is the presiding judge of Juvenile Court in Chatham County and our Funding Committee Chair. I'm going to skip over what exactly we do with the Council of Accountability Court Judges. I know you're familiar with it, but basically we're the supervisory authority to make sure that there's uniformity and fidelity to accountability courts across the state, so that someone who is attending an accountability court in Rincon or Armucci or anywhere else is getting basically the same level of treatment. And just a reminder that our accountability courts are focused on high-risk, high-needs, nonviolent offenders. We don't have gang members or sex offenders in accountability courts, but folks who are working through an addiction and or a mental health issue. We treat them in adult courts, veterans courts, DUI courts, and we have juvenile family treatment courts as well. And we look forward to you listening to what Ms. Jones has to say about our supplemental request.
Thank you, Judge.
You bet.
I'm going to try to be quick as well, but it's good to be with you, Chairman Hitchens. A few weeks ago, and I'm going to obviously talk about our budget needs today for FY25, but a few weeks ago when we were here before you on the amended budget, I took a moment to recognize all of the accountability court team members, and I just think that's important to note that we've got court coordinators, case managers, treatment providers, public defenders, law enforcement officers, prosecutors, and others that really work hard to make our program successful. So I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge them. The demand for accountability courts in our state remains very high. As you know, we provide the substance abuse and mental health services to participants while holding them accountable for their criminal activity. Last year, we served 269 more participants than we did in FY22. That's about a 4% increase. But more importantly, this year already, at the close of Q1 for fiscal year 24, we were serving 4,791 participants. This can be compared to the 4,261 that we were serving at the end of Q1 last year. This is a difference of 533 additional participants already being served this year. It's about a 12.5% increase that we're already serving for this fiscal year. So I'm going to skip over within your tracking sheet the statewide adjustments and jump to line 30.7.3, which provides an amount of $964,892 that supports existing accountability court growth. This amount would help us to serve an additional 198 participants on the average annual state cost of $4,864. We're, of course, asking for your favorable consideration for this request. Line 30.7.4 recommends an amount of $246,697 to establish one new mental health court, which would be in the Tifton Judicial Circuit, and one new DUI court, which would be in Paulding County. And of course, we're asking for your favorable consideration. Beyond that, I have passed out, or I think staff did, some green folders that indicate some additional needs that I'd like to walk you through, and I'll try and be as quick as possible, that really reflect the full needs of accountability courts and CACJ. We are requesting funds in the amount of $112,200 for an administrative coordinator position to fully support the work of Georgia's 184 accountability court programs, in addition to the council of judges that we also support. Currently, there's just 13 dedicated positions doing this work. We do not have a dedicated admin person to help us process invoices, procure goods or services, process reimbursements. Those tasks are being performed by myself as the executive director, as well as other management level staff. By securing funds for this position, it'll allow us, the subject matter experts, to focus on other things like participant housing and other strategic initiatives. This is a top priority for CACJ. Next, another item that we would respectfully ask for your consideration. In addition to the Paulding County DUI Court and the Tifton Judicial Circuit Mental Health Court, Hall County is wishing to expand their adult felony drug court. The Coweta Judicial Circuit is wishing to expand their mental health court, and the Augusta Judicial Circuit is wishing to establish a juvenile drug court. We're asking for an additional amount of $294,086 to support those courts, as well as Tifton, the one in Tifton and the one in Paulding County. All of these courts have submitted the appropriate documentation to my office to justify their request. CACJ next is respectfully requesting an amount of $343,687 for medication-assisted treatment. Medication-assisted treatment, MAT, combined with counseling and behavioral therapies, provides the whole patient approach to those diagnosed with a substance use disorder. It's considered the best practice by the CDC as well as SAMHSA. Last year alone, we were able to serve 242 participants that were utilizing MAT as part of their treatment planning. And lastly, and I hope I'm being brief, we're requesting an amount of $951,524 to serve an additional 194 participants. I mentioned a moment ago that we've already served 530 more this fiscal year. It's a 12.5% increase. And our courts work very hard to serve their communities regardless of geographic location or economic status. So to help summarize that, we're requesting, that's in your tracking sheet, $964,892 to serve 198, and we're requesting an additional amount of $951,524 to serve an additional 195. That would be a total of 393 participants. I always like to close with some performance measures information and some cost savings. I was able to do that as part of the amended budget. Our recidivism rates will remain low. We're more cost effective in that for every one state dollar invested into an accountability court, there's $5.33 saved. Our courts are continuing to do amazing work in our great state. We're thankful for your support. We're thankful for the support from the governor's office. And of course, we're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I don't have any questions except to say that I'm a true believer now. I've attended some of them in Chatham County, some of the graduations, and it's very obvious to me that if you convict somebody, fine them, or put them in jail, and then you turn them loose, they go right back to doing what they were doing previously, and that's why we had such a high recidivism rate. But when they have to be accountable, just like anybody else in our society, they seem to do much better, and I think it's a very positive thing, and I'm very supportive. So, and I appreciate all the information you always bring to me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
So it passes 2-0? Thank you, Chairman.
Sure.
Appreciate your time.
You reckon Nick? He's a retired trooper too. Well, let's go with the Department of Public Safety. Full disclosure, everybody knows the commissioner's my son, and she said go ahead. We got Eddie here now, Chairman Lumpson, but Chairman Lumpson's a retired state trooper too, so you're on.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and committee members. I will be as brief as I can, but I want you to know this is probably the best thing I've ever written, and you're not going to get to hear it. So, please turn to page 22, starting at section 39 of your tracking sheet for the Department of Public Safety. For aviation on line 39.1.6, we support the additional $36,885 to cover the in-grade career path progressions for our trooper pilots. In Capitol Police on line 39.2.1, we support the reduction of $1.2 million that will be moved from our state funds and paid by our agreement with the Georgia Building Authority for the manpower and supplies needed in and around Capitol Hill, so that'll just be a wash. In Departmental Administration on line 39.3.6, we support the governor's recommendation for one additional information technology employee to assist with our help desk. The $80,097 includes their salary and equipment cost, and the help desk services our entire agency, including all the sworn members that have in-car computer needs. On line 39.3.7, we support the governor's recommendation for the $125,000 to offset the cost of processing and the distribution of crash reports. On line 39.3.8, we support the governor's recommendation to transfer $55,949 for the purchase of a multi-purpose copier for the Public Information Office. This copier would be used to print programs, pamphlets, and booklets, and we'd be able to do it in-house and have a quicker turnaround and think of better quality. On line 39.4.6, in field offices and services, we support the recommendation for $452,558. This increase covers the salaries for vacant positions that were not included in the $6,000 pay increase in FY24 for our sworn members. We're projecting an increased graduation rate due to the success of our past trooper schools. In past years, we've been able to cover the salary increase with our attrition, but we don't think we'll be able to do that anymore. Moving to line 39.4.7, the $1.1 million increase for our dispatcher career path. These funds would add 2 non-supervisory levels to our dispatcher career path. Currently, there's only 1 non-supervisory level above the entry level, which makes it difficult to retain our experienced employees. Adding the 2 levels will hopefully allow us to both attract qualified candidates and retain the experienced dispatchers needed to ensure the safety of our sworn personnel and maximize our operational efficiency. Our dispatchers are front line to our front line. If we don't have the qualified and experienced dispatchers answering calls and ensuring troopers and officers are routed properly with the correct information, we will not be able to meet our mission. In FY20, we utilize vacant positions to fund a small salary increase to help with retention. However, currently we're experiencing a 40% turnover rate with our dispatchers, and 67% of our dispatchers have 4 years or less on. We support the recommended funds on line 39.4.8 to increase our fuel budget by $95,271 due to higher costs, especially for our diesel and aviation fuels. We support reduction of the one-time funds for the Buckhead and Jekyll Island and Post. Lastly, for field services on line 39.4.11, we support the transfer of 2 positions that work under the Office of Professional Standards. The responsibility of recruiting, hiring, background checks, and the cost of these positions are currently under DPS. However, these positions are located at GBI and are supervised by GBI staff. The $167,352 includes the position's total cost of salary and benefits. Moving to law enforcement training program on line 39.5.6. This is a newly created program in fiscal year 24. We support the governor's recommendation of $1.56 million to cover the estimated cost for the training of our trooper cadets. We've had an increase in the number of graduates, so we have fewer cadets quitting trooper school. For the Motor Carrier Compliance Division program on line 39.6.6, there's $2.59 million recommended to cover the annual cost for our weigh in motion monitoring system that we previously mentioned in our amended 24 presentation. Our last program is the Office of Peer Support Services. We support the governor's total recommendation for $591,681 that includes 2 additional peer counselors and 2 additional mental health professionals. This funding will also allow for 1 additional post-critical incident seminar and training for our additional peer support workers. And in closing, I just want to thank the governor and the legislative body for giving them the praise they deserve, and even when no one's watching. We appreciate that. That goes a long way with our men and women in uniform. And I'll be willing to answer any questions anybody has.
Either one of you have any questions?
With the helicopter, when we were in the supplemental budget, we talked about that. Do we have any requests we're never able to fulfill for local? Have we always been able to fulfill that?
With helicopter requests?
Yeah.
I would hesitant to say that we've fulfilled every request because We at nighttime, we have a helicopters on call in the North Division and the South Division, so if we get multiple calls, we may not be able to do that all at one time. But we have very few requests that we turn down. The only time that we really turn down a request is due to weather, or if we have our helicopters already on a call.
But it's not due to fuel or
No, sir.
anything like that,
No,
what you
sir.
requested?
No, sir.
Do you feel like we're gonna have increases in that kind of response?
In fuel cost?
Well, not just that, but in calls in general.
Yes, sir. We're seeing, and, you know, we're doing a lot of flying during our crime suppression details too. So what we've seen in our calls are not necessarily the same type of call that we've been getting. We've increased in our calls, but some of that is a lot more flying than their traditional go up, take a photo, picture, and come down. We spend a lot of time up in the air doing actual crime work.
Yes,
And I do think we'll see an increase in our calls as time goes on. We've added a 412 helicopter, which will allow us to do a lot more rescuing in like the gorge areas up in the mountains, and a lot more firefighting work, because it'll be able to lift a lot more weight than what the current helicopters that we have.
I get you. Thank you. I appreciate what y'all do. I support you 100%.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
No doubt about that. Thank you.
Is that gonna be sufficient with the 3 new helicopters, the increase in fuel budgeted? It's,
Yes, sir. One of the things that we had a little concern about was with the 412, that it does burn more fuel per hour, but I think it'll kind of work itself out, because if we're using the 412, we're not using the 429, which burns a lot of fuel as well. And the pilots have assured me that they feel like this is going to be a good number for us to make it. And even with the higher cost in the fuel, it's going to work out, because only one's going to be flying instead of the other.
what's the number?
60.
Just a sidebar, talking about the helicopters, do we have drones, or does the department have drones, and do they serve a purpose that might keep the use of the helicopter, before the use of the helicopter necessarily comes into play?
Yes, sir. We do have a pretty robust drone program. We have about 57 drones currently. And there is a use for some of that of capturing video from maybe a protest or a natural disaster that we cannot send a helicopter up in, you know, right away. The only real limitation we have is that those fly about 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. And then you have to bring them down and put a new battery in. And they don't, the ones we have currently don't have the FLIR operation on it. So you do lose some ability to do certain things if you put the drone up. But we do utilize our drones as much as we can.
Okay. One other thing that you mentioned, I believe, the K-9 programs.
Yes, sir.
What's the status of the K-9s? I know we put some money in for those, for that purpose. Just
Yes, sir. We
what-
currently with the department right now, we just graduated 10 new K-9s and handlers, which puts us up at about 47 K-9s statewide. And what we've tried to do is spread those out so they're not all located in one area. We've made sure that each troop in this state gets K-9s, and we currently have 23 dual-purpose dogs, and then we have 2 SWAT dogs out of those dual-purpose dogs. We have 2 emotional support dogs, 7 EOD dogs, and 15 narcotics dogs. And those EOD and narcotics are single-purpose. That's all they do.
All right, thank you.
Didn't you just get some new bite dogs?
Yes, sir. That's the dual-purpose dogs.
Okay.
And they have done a tremendous amount of work for us so far. I feel like they have allowed our troopers and officers to stay away from being injured when they go in and do those. We've had 21 catch and hold deployments this past year.
Okay, no further questions. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Office of Highway Safety.
I guarantee you this is not a conspiracy. I'm a retired trooper, and the chairman is not doing this on purpose. Mr. Chairman, thank you so much, you and the committee, for allowing me to present today. I've got a short presentation I just want to bring to your attention. On page 25, line item 39.11, I just want to let the committee know that we appreciate the opportunity for the recommendation of the governor to give us that one additional person, which you see there. It's the 65.092. Other than that, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to yield my time to any questions, or if not, I'm going to yield my time to the driver's education.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to hear from anyway, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Single line item there is 39.12.1. Actually, it's just a continuation of $2.92 million. That's an estimation of fees that will be collected in the current year. Currently, the fund has generated $1,481,000. And if you estimate that over the course of the remainder of this fiscal year, the actual collection will be somewhere closer to actually $2.435 million. So it will be a shortage again next year, reaching out to that estimated 2.9.
We're going to be short, but we're going to be fiscally able to carry on the program.
We will be able to carry on the program. We just will not be able to serve as many students as we've been accustomed to do in the past.
But as time moves forward with the bill being passed last year, we're going to be able to catch back up in a year or so.
Yes, sir. I imagine it'll probably be fiscal year 2026 before we get back to where we were before we saw those reductions because of the lapse in the sunset.
Okay. Any questions? Okay,
All right,
we
thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Appreciate it.
CJCC.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
He's not a trooper,
I am not a retired trooper, but I have
but
a
he's
lot
a
of
retired
respect for
representative. He used to sit up here when I stood down there.
troopers. Yes, sir, and I was very, very kind to you, if I remember correctly.
Good start.
I will be brief as well. I do want to say 30.6.1 is the 4% cost of living. I just want to make a comment. I appreciate Director Dunn and OPB for fully funding all of our positions. That was a blessing for us this time around, and we appreciate that very, very much. The next 30.6.6 is a transfer of funds from the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council to the Georgia Public Safety Training Center for School Resource Officer and De-escalation training. You recall we had a law enforcement training grant. It had decreased over the last several years. The only thing that was remaining in that training grant was funds that were going to GIPSTIC for these purposes. By transferring these funds directly to GIPSTIC, that takes away the responsibilities for us and for them of managing a grant award. So we fully support that transfer. The next three items all are to address a issue that we have within our victim assistance program primarily. As VOCA funds have decreased, our VOCA admin funds have decreased as well. We are operating fiscal year 24 with a $1.3 million deficit in our victim assistance division. These next three items addresses that. By the way, as a result of that shortfall, we have been on a hiring freeze this fiscal year. We have a total of 14 positions that we have not backfilled, 9 of those in our victim assistance division. 30.6.7 utilizes $95,161 for a budget and financial support position. We have 3 positions, budget positions. The work of CJCC has increased dramatically over the last few years. From fiscal year 2020 to fiscal year 2023, our funding streams have increased from 61 to 112, nearly doubling the amount of funding streams. This increase significantly impacts the budget unit, which is responsible for reconciliation of grant funds, maintaining payroll distributions, projections and budget support for CJC's grant program staff. This team of 3 has done exceptional work, but was having considerable trouble keeping up with the workload to remain fully on top of our responsibilities and continuing to be audit compliant. And last fall, we had a resignation that we did not backfill, so we're down to 2. This allows us to backfill that position and gets us back to 3 budget positions. 30.6.8, utilize existing funds to maintain current grant operations. This closes that gap, that $1.3 million gap that we're operating under currently. 30.8.3, utilize existing funds of $258,098 for 3 grant specialist positions. We have 748 active grant awards to more than 300 subgrantees. More awards with more subgrantees added each year. With that 9 open positions, as you can imagine, our workload for grant administrators has went from about 35 grants each to over 100 grants each. This funding will allow us to backfill 3 of those 9 open positions.
You saw where we put 5 in the supplemental.
We did see that.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Well, you need them. I don't know how you operate. Your whole agency is the most underfunded in state government, I believe. And most of it wasn't for, I'm just telling the truth. I worked over there for 5 years, and I understand what goes on there. And I just, insolvency was right on the borderline there a couple times. And
You're a wise man.
well, not everybody thinks that.
Yeah, I heard that. I will stand for any questions that you all may have.
We have any questions?
Could you,
Chairman?
I recall something about the fund heading toward insolvency.
Mm-hmm.
You want to expand on that a little bit and tell us what needs to be?
I assume you're asking about the Victims Comp Fund with that?
Yes.
Right.
The Victims Comp Fund is funded through the Crime Victim Emergency Fund, which is primarily funded by parole and probation fees. Those revenues coming into our Crime Victims Emergency Fund are down about $6 million a year since COVID. We anticipated that we would see those begin to rebound, but we really haven't. So we're still about $6 million short in our revenues. 2 years in a row, you all, or the governor's office, had put $8.5 million in. Without that, we would have already been insolvent. We appreciate that. We are now at about 24 to 30 months out, reaching insolvency. We still have structural deficit in the comp fund. There's still a need for us to look for additional revenues if we're going to be able to continue to provide much needed benefits to victims of crime around the state.
Just for, I know some of this, but what do you provide in crime victims, particularly those who, I know they do some hospitalization, funeral expenses and all. What are you doing now when you don't have any money and people make requests for those type of activities?
We still have the money, fortunately, and we are in a position to where we will for a couple more years. But it's a very complex formula, and the distribution of the funds have to be very strategically planned, because we receive, based on state funds distributed to crime victims or on behalf of crime victims, we receive funding from the federal government through the VOCA plan. We have to maintain a good level of state funding to maximize the drawdown on our federal funds. We are in a position where if we don't address the Crime Victims Comp Fund by early next year, we will be spending down a larger percentage of federal funds than we need to, which will begin to impact the amount of federal funds that we can draw down. As we reduce the amount of state funds that we're spending, we get less federal funds. So we begin a cycle early next year, probably. We begin a cycle where we're not spending enough state funds, depending too much on the federal funds, which means we don't draw down as much federal funds as we otherwise could, and it creates a spiral downward that the longer we wait to address this, the more difficult it will be to address it.
'Cause most of them are about 25%, aren't they? Matching?
The federal VOCA match is now 75%, but it
75% federal.
what we spend on state funds, we submit our annual, and this is only what goes to victims. This is not operation.
Okay.
What goes to victims out of state funds, we submit that to the federal government. We get a grant in VOCA funds that amounts to 75% of the state fund that we had spent.
How much money are you spending now on the sexual assault centers? I think maybe you saw where you put enough help in there to give every one of the sexual assault areas a sane nurse this time and supplemental.
If I understand that addition correctly, that's enough to put sane nurses in the centers that presently do not have a sane nurse. I think that's 8, if I remember correctly.
That's correct.
One of the challenges that we have, while we have only 8 centers that don't have a sane position, we have 11 centers that have open positions where the sane nurse has left and they've not backfilled those sane nurses. Some of them have not backfilled those sane nurses because they're concerned about the coming cuts,
Right.
and having a sane nurse is not one of their state requirements for certification. So there are some centers that have chosen not to backfill those positions due to the fears of what's going to happen with the VOCA cuts that look to be very, very near.
And I still get calls from when I was there, which was 25 years ago, from some of the domestic violence centers around where the women's shelters, and we really got in a hole here about 2 years ago, and I was wondering how that was coming along. I know last year we put some money in for security apparatus to try and
right, and that's very appreciated. As you can imagine, that's becoming more and more of a challenge and more of an issue for our shelters to be able to provide safety for those victims.
Well, although they tried to limit access to them and no advertisement of where they were located, in this day and time with computers, people can find them.
It's hard to keep that hidden.
There are no secrets anymore.
Yep.
So,
as you know, the federal VOCA award has decreased by more than 60% over the last few years. We believe it's going to, based on what we're hearing from OVC, we believe it's going down another 40% this coming year. That'll put our decrease in VOCA funds at about 77% over the last number of years. The Governor's Office, OPB, has been very good to work with us to help close that gap. Initially, we were awarded $50 million in ARPA funds. Last year, $5 million was added. In December, another $13 million was added. We are working to try to get another ARPA addition to help offset the cuts that we're looking at in October of this year. But there is a significant challenge in being able to continue to fund services around the state so that we're able to provide consistent services for victims of crime, regardless of the area of the state that they're victimized in. And what the ones that people are talking about most, and understandably so, are the domestic violence and the sexual assault centers. But impacted by this also is child advocacy centers. It's court-appointed special advocates. It's victim advocates within the prosecutor's offices. Those are all considerably funded by VOCA as well. So the cuts not only are impacting sexual assault and domestic violence, but child advocacy centers, CASAs, and victim advocates.
any questions? Judge?
If we had to replace all of those funds, how much are we talking about?
And we have
I'm
about
looking down the road and I'm trying to figure out, do we have to put up the money? How much are we looking at?
we have about a $44 million gap a year. That is to continue to provide services as we are around the state. And to give an example, I was in a meeting Tuesday with 4 sheriffs And they were talking about their concern with these cuts coming. If they lose their satellite sexual assault centers, what does that mean in their county? And one of the sheriffs told me Tuesday morning, he said, if the satellite office in my county closes, and we're out on a call at 3 o'clock in the morning with a rape victim, my only option will be to put her in the back of a cruiser after having just been raped, to put her in the back of a cruiser and transport her 125 miles to a sexual assault center to get a sexual assault exam. I don't know who would look at that and say, well, that's a good idea. As traumatized as she is at that point in time, she needs to be able to have services rendered, victim-centered, trauma-informed services rendered without having to take a 125-mile trip in the back of a cruiser to get those services. Those are the kind of real impacts that we're looking at if these cuts are enacted. Some of these satellite offices, for example, will have no option but to close. These are the kind of impacts: sexual assault centers, domestic violence shelters, child advocacy centers, CASAs, victim advocates. These are the kind of real impacts that they're going to see. I shared in our joint budget hearing the number of positions, and I think it was 200 and something positions that are likely to be lost in rural parts of the state. And when I was asked about those positions, I reminded the committee that while I am concerned about people losing their jobs, what I'm most concerned about is that our victims in Georgia, in every county in this state, will have access to consistent services in their time of need, not metro area victims having access to services, but rural victims not having it. That's not the Georgia that I want to be a part of.
Yeah.
I want to see those services continue.
As a former prosecutor, the information you can get from a trained child advocate that's interviewed the child, all of that kind of stuff, the sexual assault, SANE nurse and what they do, all of that stuff is so valuable when you get into the courtroom to be able to prove your case. Without it, a lot of cases would go away and the perpetrator would still be walking the streets. That's an area I'm really concerned about.
So obviously it's not just about the support of the victim, but it's also about the accountability of the offender.
Right.
And just my 2 cents, most rapists are serial rapists. So if we don't have the proper evidence, we don't go through it, and they walk the streets, they're gonna hurt other people. We need to be certain that we get the information, the evidence we need, so we can put those people away.
Yeah.
So, anyway, any further questions? Our hearts are with you.
Thank you.
I know what you're going through, and it's been a 2 or 3 year struggle here now, and I hope there's some light at the end of the tunnel.
Thank you.
I don't know about the federal part. We want to do what we can to help you.
We have a great team at CJCC doing everything they can to support our partners. We have nonprofits around this state that are passionate about helping victims, and they're doing everything they can as well. And it takes quite a team to be able to provide those victim services and provide the evidence needed and to prosecute and to hold accountable. It takes quite a team to be able to do that.
Some of those advocates communicate with me on a regular basis. All of them aren't happy all the time, but for the reasons identified here. I mean, they just feel like they're not getting the funding they need to do the job as it ought to be administered. So, well, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Board of Pardon and Parole.
Good afternoon, Chairman and distinguished committee members. I'm Chris Barnett, Executive Director for the Georgia Board of Pardons and Paroles. Here with me today, I have our Chief Financial Officer, Kristen Kinney. Also, our Clemency Division Director, Crystal Moon, and our Director of Communications, Steve Hayes. Let me start by saying thank you to the committee, and given the hour of the day, I will try to be as brief as I can. Our budget begins on page 20 of your tracking sheet. Outside of statewide changes, the State Board of Pardons and Paroles really has 3 agency line items, and these line items could be considered next steps or annualizing changes that were approved by the committee during the amended FY24 budget process. So under the board admin program, line 35.1.3, increased funds for training software in the amount of $3,150. We request these funds for training record-keeping software, which annualizes the approved committee recommendations from FY24. Under the Clemency Division, line 35.2.6, increased funds for 3 criminal investigators and 1 hearing examiner in the amount of $425,865. This recommendation for 4 additional staff is due to the growth and change in the prison population makeup and the complexity of the cases that we're dealing with. That is what is driving our demand and request for this line item. And to ensure the board can meet its constitutional mandate while protecting public safety here in Georgia, we ask the committee's favorable consideration on this line item. Our final line item is 35.2.7, increased funds for 1 GCIC terminal operator position in the amount of $58,323. This line item will allow us to hire 1 additional GCIC terminal operator to enter final parole arrest dispositions in GCIC. Also provides us the opportunity to bring that administrative task in-house or centralized, freeing up those officers in the field to use their focus and energy on that critical public safety role that they perform every day. That is our 3 asks. I ask for your favorable consideration. I'll stand by for questions.
And I probably should ask this of corrections, but what's the increase in the prison population? I thought it was right around 52,000, which had been fairly level. I don't.
Yeah, since corrections is sitting here behind me, I don't want to
Right.
speak out of turn. I want to say state inmates is 49,000, total population 51,000.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, we appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Sure. That was great. I told everybody to begin with, brevity is your friend here today, so I,
Commissioner Oliver said he's more than welcome to give us a few dollars.
GBI.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and committee members. GBI's requests will be on page 14, I believe, and I will skip down to 30.3.5, which is $1,897,648, and that is for increased funds to annualize 21 crime lab positions that were partially funded in FY24. That is for 14 scientists, 2 lab managers, 4 lab techs, 1 evidence receiving technician. A few of those are already in hiring process at this point in time with backgrounds and so forth. The next item is 30.3.6, and that eliminates funds for one-time startup funding, and that is associated with the new positions that were funded in FY24 for the crime lab positions. It was one-time purchases of equipment, microscopes, etc. 30.3.7 provides funds to restore service contracts for our crime lab instrumentation. In FY21, that was cut $1.1 million in those contracts, and not having those contracts in place when equipment goes down is affecting our backlogs. And it's obviously also providing for or causing slower response times and getting vendors on site to make repairs and upgrades when necessary. And that projected cost is $1,536,237. 30.3.8 is $1,334,031. That's for increased funds for 6 death investigation specialists, 1 forensic photographer, 1 quality manager, 1 business support analyst, supervisor, and 1 business support analyst in the medical. All of these are to address support within our ME's office around the state, to include support for the child fatality review unit that is also part of the GBI and falls under the medical examiner's office. 30.3.9 is $251,421. That is to increase funds to provide locality pay for 3 medical examiners for the Pooler ME's office to assist with recruitment.
Is that, you bringing them in from somewhere? Is that to stay in motels, or is that to
That's
give
to
them?
attract them as doctors there. We did
Okay.
the same thing with Macon.
Well, that's in my district. I thought everybody wanted to come there.
Well, stand by, because we do have 1 doctor out of Texas that is in background right now that wants to come to Pooler, and we have a fellow, same thing, that wants
I
to
mean,
come.
really, that's a great community. I'm sure you've been in there,
It is.
and people coming from all over the country to, it's about to break its bounds with the number of people coming in, so.
And this, and that's a great facility, obviously, in Pooler as well.
It is a wonderful facility. Y'all did a great job, but we actually, I'm sure you know this, we actually donated the property, but they built a great building.
But that would be to attract doctors to come to Pooler.
Right.
And like I said, we did the same thing, we're doing the same thing for Macon. 30.5.6, $221,874. That's to increase funds to add 2 criminal intel analysts for support of the criminal street gang database. We are still doing a lot of the training around the state for that, but these 2 intel analysts would be there to vet information that is entered in and support any of the required audit functions that go with the protocols for that system. 30.5.7 is $167,352, and the Colonel mentioned that earlier. That is to transfer the 2 Department of Public Safety intel analysts at the watch desk over to GBI and to continue that operation to go from DPS to GBI. 30.5.8 is $4,865,094. That is to increase funds for 9 special agents, 2 digital forensic investigators, 2 criminal intel analysts, and 1 office manager. And those are and other associated costs to establish a gang task force office in Columbus, Georgia, that we have been partnering with Columbus Consolidated Government in standing that up, and it would also serve the surrounding jurisdictions within the Columbus area as well. 30.5.9 would eliminate one-time startup funding that was associated with the new positions that were funded in FY24, and that was for the cold case unit for GBI. That is $1,588,282. Again, those were one-time costs, mainly for equipment to support the 13 sworn positions and non-sworn support staff that went with that unit when it was created in the beginning of the fiscal year. That is all the requests that we have for FY25. Unless you want me to, would you like me to go into capital projects as well, sir?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I am interested in the cold case, though. It's where do we stand with that? I saw where he turned a bunch of money back in, and I know it's difficult to recruit, particularly with people like you who've got to train your people. Once you get them hired, you got to send them to school, and that takes time.
Right. Typically, they're filled with experience, and then we
Well,
do
I
the
figured
backfill. Yeah.
You would put experienced people in the cold
Right.
case unit and then backfill with new agents.
Yes, sir. The unit was stood up at the first of the year. They have been up to recently here in a review process to take requests that fit the protocol of the Coleman-Baker Act to ensure that it did fit those requests, and then to review those to see if there were any probative leads, whether that was investigatively or through re-examining evidence or having evidence looked at with new technology. I believe it is 7 that they have determined up to this point that they will reopen or do full investigations on, and that may consist of evidence re-examination and or interviews or both. that they will pursue now.
What about equipment? Have they got all the equipment they need and,
Yes, sir. I believe so. Again, that was one of the things that we were eliminating on the funding was the one-time purchase on equipment. We are currently fairly close into getting them into a office space, I believe. And once we get them in there and get them settled, it'll be a lot more advantageous for them.
well, I was glad to see it. You know, when I heard the numbers with cold cases in Georgia, it was astounding to me. And I have to sit and watch that all the time with my wife. She thinks she watches all those detective shows, and
Yes.
I told her they're not going to be as efficient as they are on TV because they only show the positive ones. But when I heard how many people, particularly in Clark County, how many probably co-eds are missing and unaccounted for, it just shocked me. And we appreciate the job you're doing with that.
Thank you.
Let's see. What about the security upgrades at GBI? Were they disregards last year? We put some money in.
Were they? Okay, yes, they're available, and we're working on some of that now.
Okay.
Right now, if you come by, we're doing a lot of replacement on windows, especially those that face the highway or the street, and upgrading those. And we're looking at fencing, redoing fencing, and securing the gates better. I'll put it like that.
Okay. I don't want to get too in-depth on that, I am. Okay, we got a couple questions. Judge, is that yours or Chairman? Okay. I guess it's all right to still call you Judge. I keep, yeah, well, they still call me Colonel, and I don't.
You can call me Judge too.
I don't think we'll do that.
Has the salary adjustments helped on the retraining staff in the crime labs?
I believe so. Yes, sir. I don't have the exact numbers of the hires that have been made here recently. I know that we have several that are in training right now. To give you an example, I believe there are 10 chemists that are in training for calendar year 24. I will also say that we looked at some statistics yesterday comparing backlog from June until the end of January, and it was 12% less in our backlog numbers. And I attribute that to hiring, bringing on new scientists. Even with the hires, though, we're looking at, depending on the discipline they're going in, anywhere from 1 year to 2 years, depending on whether it's a chemist or firearms examiner, as far as the training regiment goes for that.
Okay, and how they compare to the nearby, like FBI lab? Now,
I don't have
competitive or?
Comparison numbers, but
Yeah,
salaries.
Our salaries are lower than the federal.
okay.
Which is I'm trying to look most.
And I believe it's been that way for a while, but I think it's that way with all positions.
One last
compared to
thing,
feds.
on the medical examiner loan forgiveness program, is that working?
I believe so. Just in the attraction of the doctors that have come over with the fellowship program and that are showing interest in the agency, I believe it is a combination of the loan forgiveness, the fellowship program in general, the leadership that Dr. Smith and his team are providing, and just the enthusiasm there that is within that ME's office. And we've seen the numbers go up, and to say that we'll have likely 2 doctors in Pooler by the end of this fiscal year is an accomplishment.
And that's a real backlog when you get autopsies backed up. And, because a lot of people ask for autopsies that aren't really criminally related, and, you got to prioritize it. And I've had a couple in my area where, we didn't have an ME and had to bring somebody in Atlanta to come down and do it.
Well, even at this point in the year, and we still have several months left in this fiscal year, our MEs are already, and this is a combination of autopsies and consultations both, are already over what the national standard of $250 per doctor would be by almost 50.
And we gave them a good bump, pretty good bump in salary, 2 years ago. I hope that's helped some. I know a lot of people don't know there are over 1,000 ME positions across this country, and there are only about 500. So it's a real competitive environment, and if you don't pay and provide benefits, you're not going to get any, and
Yes, sir.
or you're not going to be able to retain them. So
Correct.
I think it's the judge this time, isn't it?
Now it's me. Does the cold case unit need any funding for investigative tools?
We we need the funding, and you had those numbers. It is for the genetic genealogy through Orthram, and then AI technology. We are looking at about 75,000 for the genetic genealogy, and that's based on 10 cases per year. And then the investigative artificial intelligence is around 80,000 a year for that, and that would be in support of what they're already doing. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for what you do. I think I asked this question before, but I want to ask it again. You know, we do have a backlog on doing the lab work from autopsies and from specific things. And, you know, that being in a business, and I'm in the coroner business and the other thing, that really holds up death certificates and that sort of thing. What do you need? What could we do? Is there any specific thing that y'all may have worked on from previous folks running the GBI that we could help to kind of relinquish this? I know there's a good bit of cases where the evidence is backlogged, and I know from personal experience that is a problem. And it affects, I don't think a lot of the general public realizes how much that affects everything moving forward. As far as a criminal case, is everything that we do. And so is there anything that you got specific plans or anything that we might could assist you? I know we've put some money in for some different equipment, but
well, we've seen a reduction, like I mentioned earlier, from June to January of 12% in our backlog, and I attribute that to getting more positions on to address these cases. Obviously, submissions go up each year, and having the personnel to adequately address those is what we've seen up to this point being a success. And then obviously being able to retain them, having the facilities for them to be able to do their work, work in the equipment. I think we're okay on it right now, but with the service contracts that I mentioned earlier, that obviously keeps that equipment running and keeps us from falling into a further backlog situation. But just to give you an example, I believe it is estimated that a chemist can work around 750 cases a year. And we have 10 in training right now, and that would be, you know, over 7,000 cases that would be added, or that could be worked by that chemist over the course of a year. Even at that, that only accounts for less than a quarter probably of what our backlog is. And I use chemistry as an example because it is by far the one with the highest backlog of about 80% of our total backlog within the crime lab. But it's gonna continue to take being able to bring on personnel to address it, having the resources there, whether it is within the lab facilities itself, the equipment, to continue to address it and give them what they need to do their job.
do we do all the testing at one lab, or do we have any other
We
lab?
do some outsourcing.
Outsourcing?
Yes, sir.
Okay, but our main lab is Atlanta, and then we outsource. We don't have any other labs around the state?
Oh, yes, sir. We have Cleveland, Moultrie, Pooler.
Yeah, when I say doing the like the toxicology, blood alcohol, all those type things.
There's different disciplines in each one of the labs.
Each discipline in each one. But all of them got capabilities that we might could upgrade, or is there any?
Well, to give you an example, and I've got you have the breakdown on the disciplines. So to give you an example, I'll use Macon, for example. Macon is primarily chemistry right now. And what we would like to see there, obviously, is to expand that lab down there. It suffered budget cuts years ago like everybody else did. but to expand our chemistry section, because again, that is the biggest backlog, and a big percentage of it is there out of the Macon lab outside of headquarters. But then to also bring back our firearms examiner discipline there, as well as toxicology. And those disciplines really need to be there from the standpoint of working cases involving guns and firearms. We have something in the middle of the state where we can service that. But then also, those disciplines also complement the ME's office as well. So a lot of those services that are coming out of that are needs that are coming out of the ME's office from autopsies could be done locally, as opposed to having them shipped to other labs, headquarters, whatever the case may be. So with each lab, there's different disciplines there, and we're trying now to look and see where we could expand disciplines within these labs to better service the state, obviously with what funding we needed to be to do that with.
Yes, sir. Well, I'd love to help you see you do that, because I think you would expedite a lot of things.
Myself and Assistant Director Dutton, we have visited all but one of our labs right now, and we'll get to it. And we've gone there to look at the services they provide, see what their needs are, and how can we better address that, getting obviously their input in it as well, giving some great ideas. But, you know, relying on our division director for the crime lab to say, if we could expand right here, this would really help. And just in the little things that we've done, and I call it little, but they're very big, in bringing on the other personnel, like I said.
Yes.
And it may just be the way the moon and the stars have lined up, but we have seen a reduction in that backlog, and we'll continue to have one until we can get adequate personnel on it or the submissions slow down.
Yes, sir.
But we are still, let me say this too, because I think this is very important. We are still prioritizing cases. So if I have a prosecutor call up that needs something prioritized, we're pushing it to the front of the line, and it's getting done.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it in any way that we can help. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate the GBI, but we particularly appreciate the crime lab. Administrative justice stops when the crime lab stops, and in this day and time, it's very difficult to do any prosecuting without the crime lab. People that watch TV and see all the things you see on TV have an expectation when they sit on the jury that you're going to be able to scientifically prove something, and it's a tough job. And and I know that your people, you train them, spend thousands and thousands of dollars to get them up to where they can do the job, and then they opt out for a job somewhere else paying better money. And I wish we could better arrange things so that didn't happen, but.
Well, we got great people. There's no
Yeah.
doubt about it, and hopefully we can convince them to stay on the team with us, because they do a great job, and we greatly appreciate what they do.
We appreciate it. I hate to say this, but all of us on the Appropriations Committee got to run across the street here for a few minutes to vote on a bill. I hope, my understanding is it's not anything difficult, and it should go rather fast, so I hope to be right back. But I apologize to all of you that been sitting here since 12:30. I know this isn't the place that y'all were looking to be all afternoon. So we're going to adjourn temporarily and move across the street. Back in business, Department of Corrections up next. Page 9 on the sheets.
Like I say, we're on page 9. I'll go ahead and jump right on in, skip the statewide, and we go to tracking number 19.1.7. In recruitment, advertising, and work culture, you see a 6.1 million, and we're going to utilize that to transfer 3.5 out of offender management and requesting the increased funds of 2.5 million to support that ongoing effort. As you all know, recruitment and retention is a top priority of ours at Department of Corrections, and it's been successful since the inception of this program in 2022 in November. And we had a net increase of about 670 COs and CO technicians since the implementation of that. So we're just asking for that 2.5 increase and to support the transfer to keep that program ongoing. Next, at 19.3.6 in our food and farm operations budget, it's to provide additional meals to offenders on the weekends at 1.2 million. It's still going to provide, still meet the caloric intake for needs for the offenders, but supply extra meals on the weekends. Well, 3 meals on the weekends. As you know, during COVID, we started that, and we want to continue that. And the cost of food rising, we just ask for that support in that line item.
Don't you think that's an important item?
It is.
Well, you know, we did in supplemental. Some people didn't see the necessity of it, but I can't imagine in the prison system you're only feeding people twice a day and expect them to remain harmonious.
Absolutely.
So.
Next in our healthcare, 19.4.6. You see the increase there of 71.9 million. Of course, a contributing factor to the increased cost of that is the medical staffing inflation, nursing shortages, our aging population, coupled with more advanced diseases. We're finding more people are coming into our system with more advanced diseases. We're catching that on intake and diagnostics, and of course, defensive medicine and trauma treatment.
What's going on with the medical college? Are you still utilizing their facilities, or?
Augusta?
Right.
No, sir. Just the hospital itself, but not their medical contract services.
You're contracting for physicians and?
Yes, we're using a different vendor for that. WellPath currently. Next is our private prisons, 19.6.1, increased bed capacity. That line item is at 6.9 million. And it's temporarily utilizing the 400 additional beds that they have there at 2 facilities. As we do our hardening projects and security upgrades in some of our prisons, we currently we need that bed space so we can do those much needed repairs inside of our facilities, and we ask for your favorable consideration and that support in that line item. Next, of course, going to state prisons, 19.7.11 capital maintenance and repairs at 17.5 million. Again, that just goes in line with what I was talking about, our aging infrastructure. We're constantly doing upgrades and repairs on that, and we just ask for your favorable consideration and in that line item as well. Next in our transitional centers at 19.8.8, operational costs for Metro Reentry Phase 4, our Metro Reinvestment Center is adding additional 400 transitional center beds in the Metro Atlanta area, and we're asking for favorable consideration at $10 million for operational costs for that. Mr. Chairman, that'll conclude the big items in the FY25 budget. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you all may have.
You got any little items?
I do. I can go over them if you like.
No, we'll let you take them out of hide. Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know that you've got a lot of aging facilities. Have you done an assessment of what it would cost to upgrade everything to where it needs to be?
Yes, and actually we have a capital outlay list of everything that needs to be repaired, and also there was an assessment done on all state facilities by GISFIC over the off session too, that we have that list of much needed repairs. It far exceeds, I can tell you this, it far exceeds the allocated recommendations that we have. And
How far does it exceed? What kind of money are we talking about?
At least $200 million a year to keep things running, keep them upgraded.
And what happens, I'm just curious if I can follow, Mr. Chairman, what happens if because of some of the conditions, et cetera, like in some of our areas have happened, feds come in and say, bang, here's where you are. It seems like we'll find the 200 million then, you know, because it's inevitable with the size of our prison population and what's going on and everything, you know. Somebody's going to sue us about the conditions of these prisons. And I'm just talking about an ounce of prevention.
Yeah, I think, you know, our major thing is our infrastructure is failing us, like our boiler systems, things of that nature. Of course, anything metal in there that the offender population can get their hands on, they're making homemade weapons out of. And so that's kind of what we're facing, is just our infrastructure itself. As far as the cleanliness of it, I think, you know, by far, you know, sanitation measures are impactful.
Well, I know you're clean and everything.
Yeah.
I got a pair of shoes, I polished them till a hole came in them. Couldn't polish them no more.
Yes, sir, you're right.
Any other questions? Just out of curiosity, I see we're going to feed them sandwiches on Saturdays and Sundays. What kind of sandwiches do you feed them?
It all depends. We get with our dietitian and we make sure that it meets their caloric.
They're nutritious.
Nutritious.
Well, I just saw.
I had a fried bologna last night for dinner, and it was amazing. So.
I just saw them when we used to have inmates at the state patrol offices, and usually it was bologna with maybe a little mustard or mayonnaise. That was about it. It wasn't. You do better than that now?
Oh, they might get a slice of cheese or something. No, but no, it's honestly, you know, they you know, we make sure that they get, you know, something of nutritional value.
Okay.
Tell my wife how much nutrition bologna got.
It did me good. It filled me up last night. That's what I ate.
Chairman Bill.
Thank you, and thank you, Commissioner. I know we've talked a lot about the entry-level CO. What about the CO3s? Do we need funding for that? And can you just help us bridge that gap?
Yeah, with the support of all the recommendations in the amended and the fiscal year 25, we can utilize our existing funds that we have currently to support that line item.
Okay, and one more, if I may, Chairman. You know, we dry docked Autry. Is that going to be put on repeat, or what is the plan there?
For Autry?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I missed your first part of your question.
Once Autry is dry docked, do we plan on doing this again?
Yes.
Okay.
Wilcox will probably be the next one, and then we'll continue from there. So hopefully we'll have Autry back online later this year.
Okay. One final thing, just from a leftover from a previous question, somebody asked about the population. What did it change drastically? Was there a difference after COVID?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. We dropped about 10,000 during COVID, and now it's starting to pick back up. What you have now coming into the system, now the court's ramping back up. Of course, a more violent, younger population. Of course, now they're coming in. Actually, when COVID was happening, you didn't have the medical care, so now they're coming in a lot sicker, they're undiagnosed, and so the population has increased since then, back up to 51,000.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry. I may have missed this, but I was just curious, what's the starting salary on the correction officers?
40,000.
40?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is that comparable to?
It's still a little low compared when you compare it to other county jails around where we have our prisons and other states. We're on the lower side of that.
So we over the last 5 or 6 years, it's been raised pretty substantial, hasn't it?
Yes, it has, and we're appreciative of that. It's still a little bit of work to do on that, obviously, but you know, with the support of this budget, I think it'll add the starting salaries up to about 44.
44.
Yes.
Okay.
And I can remember a few years ago when it was 27.
Yeah,
Yeah.
20,
Yeah,
yeah, when
I
I came in
remember when
state
I first
government.
came in, it was 31, I think.
So,
So,
and it's been like that for a while. I think I came in state government 2019, and it was around 28, 30. So,
Yeah.
appreciative of the governor and this body for supporting pay raises over the years.
And what would that bring somebody up to that's a CO3 now, approximately?
CO3 will be at a close security prison. The starting salary will be about 58,
okay.
53, and then currently, and then if the budget passes, 58.
Judge?
I got in late, so maybe I missed it. With the private prisons, are their officers being paid similarly, or is it just based on their
Currently, it's the
contract
same.
they have with
Currently, the officers are being paid the same.
Same?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think they're coming up soon, so they may be able to speak to that.
They're
and
coming
more
up
accurately.
next, and I'm sure they're going to ask for that.
Okay, all right. And how many prisons are we, that the state has funded and also the private?
We have 4 private prisons in the state
Okay,
with 2 contract vendors.
all right. And how many total in?
35.
State funded, 35?
Yes, sir.
And what kind of path are we on for growth? How many prisons are you gonna need in the next 10 years?
You know, it's kind of hard to say with the coming in a lot younger, staying with us a lot longer. Currently, I feel we're in a good shape as far as bed wise. Now, long term, I need to do a deeper dive and look at that where we're going to be at long term. We're right at capacity right now, but that's taking consideration that we have about 2,800 beds offline. And so with that, if we didn't have those beds offline, we'll have a little bit of breathing room. But I need to do a more deeper dive and see what that long-term impact would be.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
How many of the prisons are co-located with the private prisons? Aren't there 2 or 3?
Baldwin and Riverbend sit on the same property, and I want to say that's about it.
And I'm asking this primarily for the comparison for the private prisons, because if you pay the private prison guards a salary that's lower than the regular prison guards, they're going to walk across the street and take a job over there, and then we're going to have an imbalance and won't have enough guards over at the private prisons. Isn't that correct?
Yes, could be. And also it goes back to the workplace culture too. And I think that's a huge contributing factor to it.
But the private prisons don't get benefits either, do they? They get retirement and...
I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, we asked them.
Okay.
Is that all the questions? We appreciate it. Thank
right,
you for what you
thank
do.
All right, appreciate it.
Private prisons. This is another one of your guys here, Al. He couldn't get in the Marines. He was an Army officer.
Sorry about that, Mr. Chairman.
Don't worry about it, we know the real story.
Warden Adams, he was in the Army as well, so we're standing together. Cool. So, yeah. Cool.
One Marine, 20 Army officers, you know.
We don't want any, especially in your committee, Mr. Chairman. So, thank you very much for the opportunity to present today, Mr. Chairman, committee members, Jerry Langford with Core Civic, Warden Adams with Core Civic with me. He is the warden of our Jenkins Correctional Facility there in Millen, has been the warden there for about 8 years now. GEO, I don't think they have someone here today, but I'll probably speak just for private prisons in general. I think first thing I want to say is thank you very much. The last 2 years, you all have given us increases in line with the GDC facilities. As a result, we've been able to provide pay increases for our folks. I think, like the department, we've seen improvement in vacancies being lowered. We've also seen improvement in turnover as well. Our ask, and you are right, Mr. Chairman, we do have an ask, is simply for pay parity. So as you all look at giving the department very much needed pay increases, the folks at those facilities, some of the toughest jobs, I would say, in the state. I certainly don't think I could do it day in and day out. It's just tough. And so they deserve everything they're getting. We would just ask that our folks who are doing the exact same job, who go through the exact same training, would be considered and get that same pay so we can continue on the same path and continue to be successful in providing safe, secure facilities here in the state of Georgia. So with that, I will also say Ms. George did provide a spreadsheet to us to fill in. I will tell you that we did go through that process and looked. I think initially we thought our CoreCivic number was probably close to 4 million. I will tell you, I think it is close to 2.7 million instead. So good news, the number's coming down. So I will send that information to you. Ms. George, if you will, take a look, let us know if we missed anything, but hopefully everything's accurate there. I believe GEO is doing the same thing as well, so expect for them to send something to you here in short order.
And if you do that, would you include, are we paying for any vacant positions, or are we just for a number head on hand?
These are all filled positions is what we were told. So
Okay.
these are all positions that have currently been filled, no unfilled positions.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And then, certainly with Warden Adams today, we've made the rounds, talked to some folks. Wanted to bring him in case you all had any specific questions for him. He has boots on the ground every day. He's seen the difference that these pay increases have made, and is, wanting to just advocate very strongly for these increases going forward as well.
Well, you heard me ask the question to the Department of Corrections, do you pay for retirement in the same level?
Yes, sir. What we have what is probably competitive for any company, and that it's a 401k match. And so our company matches up to 5% of what the employee puts in. And then on top of that, I will tell you, having been in the military, having worked with Pfizer Pharmaceuticals after that, this company has as robust a benefit package as anywhere I've personally been. And I would venture to say the warden could say the same thing. So I feel like we definitely take care of our folks.
Representative Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Warden Adams, over at Millen, how many employees do you have and how many inmates do you have? And then I'll have a follow-up question.
Okay, we allotted 201 employees. We're currently vacant 17 positions, and we house 1,150 inmates.
And you're vacant 17
Positions.
positions.
Yes, sir. That's all staff. Mind you, the numbers are a little skewed because we have 14 cadets that's going through background clearance. So if any of those don't clear their background, then I have to exclude those from that number.
What is your turnover now, and have you seen an improvement with the raises that we've supplied?
Yes, sir. Turnover percentage is about 48%, and we have documents that show that the raise has shown a significant increase in our stability of staff, and I applaud you all for the support that we've been given year over year to keep us in line with the state of Georgia. But yes, sir, it's our applicant pool. We maintain 70 to 80 in our applicant pool, so we start screening a little harder. I just hate to lose some grounds. Yes, sir.
But in Millen, that's probably considered a fairly good job, isn't it? It's primarily an agricultural region with very little industry and opportunity.
Right. Yes, sir. Correct. Yes, sir. What, excuse me?
You opened the facility, you had a holiday. It was a big deal.
Yes, sir, it was.
Big deal.
It was.
Well, some companies shut down there, didn't they? And it really caused some consternation about the people there having the ability to make a living.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I worked actually with Speaker Burns, that used to be his district, and so worked with him. There was a fine lady, Miss Mabel Jenkins there, and worked with the community. They had lost 4 or 5 companies over the course of 10 years, and so that facility was a much-needed shot in the arm for them, and I think it's been a great partnership.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? We appreciate you,
Yes,
even
sir.
if you were in the Army.
Thank you. Thanks, sir.
Well, Marines, we used to give them our rejects.
Kim. Georgia Firefighter Standards and Training.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, I'll introduce myself. I'm Randy Toms. I'm the Executive Director of Georgia Firefighter Standards and Training. I think just because you asked last time and some of them were not in the room, I started in the fire service in 1985. Spent 27 years with Warner Robins Fire, and then spent 8 years as mayor of the city of Warner Robins. Got rescued from that by an election that didn't go my way, and or maybe it did. And now I'm in this position, and I'm loving what I'm doing. I'm really going to be brief because I have a simple request. I'm grateful for what you've done for us already in the amended budget, and I don't want to sound ungrateful in any way at all. But I want to give you a couple of numbers that I didn't have the last time I was before you. And that is that I got a count yesterday of the number of written tests in 2022, which was the last year that we had all written tests. We weren't online testing at that time. And in 2022, the number of tests taken and graded was 2,760 tests. It sounds like a lot until you look at from May of 2023 until yesterday, the number of tests that had been graded were 6,936 tests. That's a huge increase in testing. So, and one of the ways we do that is we have staff members that have the vehicles that they need to tote the testing equipment that they have in the way of a carry case and Chromebooks as they go around through the areas. They also carry a hotspot with them so that when they go into areas of the state that are unserved by internet so well, they're able to take a hotspot in there, and if they can get cell service, they can test in those areas. So that's been a big advantage to some of the unserved parts of the state, who are primarily volunteer fire departments, and so it's made a big difference in their testing as well. We've also decreased the amount of time of testing and getting grades back and getting people their results by over 50% because of our online testing facility. So what I'm asking for is, with the graciousness that you've already bestowed upon us, I'm asking for you to give me that one more position that I need to put one more person out on the road. I asked for that initially. I promise you this, whether I get it or whether I don't, we're going to continue to do a great job for the state of Georgia Fire Service. I've got people out testing. The reason I said as of yesterday is because I'm sure that number changed significantly today with online testing. So that's what I'm asking for. I thank you for what you've done already, and we're eager to get going with everything that you do for us. Any questions?
Well, I thank you. I've watched what your agency has done over the last 8 or 10 years, and it really has professionalized. When I was the Homeland Security Director, I had no idea there were 70,000 volunteer firemen in this, or 70% of the firemen in this state were volunteers, and it's a whole lot more difficult to round them up as it is professional firefighters who report to work every day.
Right.
So. And
it's actually changed a little bit, if I could, because of the difficulty in recruiting volunteers in general. But there's roughly 580 departments in the state of Georgia. That's departments. There's roughly 3,500 or in excess of 3,500 stations and around 29,000 fire personnel in the state. I think the numbers have changed a little bit. I think it's 60 now, 60 volunteer, 60% compared to 40% career. But I think what we're doing also with our online testing and our database is giving them a better opportunity to get people hired and get them people on the trucks and in service at a quicker rate. And so hopefully we're helping with their retention. And as they grow in the fire service and as we're able to test them more rapidly, I think they're going to stay, and the retention's also going to improve.
And you get the volunteers qualified rather
Yes,
than
sir.
just people falling out and jumping on the trucks and going.
Yes, sir. And I would also like to say that certainly I think standards and training has grown a lot and improved over the last 8 to 10 years, but certainly within the last 2 years.
Yeah.
That's how long I've been there. So I just just thought I'd say that.
Well, we thank you.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it.
Thank y'all very much.
Post, Peace Officer Standards and Training.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman,
I too will be as brief as possible. As you know, ours is found on page 70 under 39-9. No, excuse me, I'm messed up. 39-9. We'll pass through those things that are generic to everybody.
Excuse me, on the tracking sheet, it's page 26 for.
Yeah, hold on just a second.
You're probably out of the big budget book, aren't you?
I don't know what in the world I just looked at. Kind of rocky start, sir. It's been a rocky day, I'll be honest with you. That's it? Yeah, I'm sorry. Should be 39-9. So 39-9.2 is a reflection adjustment telecommunication and infrastructure rates for Georgia Technical Authority, 2,310. 39.93 adjustment agency premiums. We've already talked about that. 39.94 provide funds to provide an additional $3,000 targeted salary enhancement for selected post personnel and law enforcement officers. 39.9.5 increase funds for Georgia Post Resiliency Program previously funded through the Criminal Justice Coordinating Law Enforcement Training Group for $647,000. 39.96 provide funds for one curriculum auditor, $118,891. 39.97 provide funds for one investigative division deputy director at $127,028. And finally, 39.98 increase funds for system maintenance support for an online gang and human trafficking system. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to entertain any questions you might have.
I got a couple, but the first one is, are you seeing any increase in the number of cases that are coming before you? And I know.
Interesting you should say that. I pulled some data on that recently when we looked at our investigators, and pull that up right quick. Over the last 3 years, you got that sheet, Chris? Here we go. In 2021, we opened and closed 663 investigations. 2022, we opened and closed 840. Last year, we opened and closed 1,561, so we've tripled our output with no appreciable number of additional staff in terms of investigations. The staff that we have has just really just stepped up the quality of the work that they've done.
Do you have any specific problem that is causing numbers to go up?
The two biggest issues we see periodically is of course, smuggling of contraband across the guard line is a huge issue, and the other is deception in official matters, such as internal investigations, affidavits, things of that nature.
When I was over there, it seemed to be stalking. I don't.
We're not really seeing quite as much of that. We still have, people who test dirty on drugs, and we still have the occasional person who drives a patrol car intoxicated. But by and large, most of our issues tend to be violation of public trust.
What about the Attorney General's office? When I was there, they told us that we were too hard on people, and that we had to mediate a lot of the cases rather than take them to trial because they couldn't stand the numbers.
I think that they would. That probably hasn't changed. The only difference is. A couple of years ago, the House and the Senate approved a little money for me to take cases to OSA, and we have yet to lose one. So, as you know, I'm not one who backs down very easily. So, if the council has made a recommendation we believe we should go forward, we're going to go forward with it.
Okay. Any other questions? We appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
That's Georgia Public Safety Training Center. Another trooper couldn't make it, had to find him another job.
Well, thank you, Colonel. Mr.
All right, you're
Chairman.
next, buddy.
You got another one to come after me,
No,
though.
I said, you're next, buddy.
He didn't last near as long, though. Well, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, committee members. We're on page 24 of the docket and start at 39.10.1. So 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all statewide changes, so I won't break those down individually. Then we've got a few items that are what we call true-up items. Those items were either underfunded or not funded at all. So I'll go through those and call the numbers, and I'll explain each one if you need explanation. But 39.10.5, 39.10.7, 39.10.8, and 39.10.11. I'll move on to 39.10.6. That's an ask for $313,000 for 2 positions and instructor development. One is a mechanic at our garage. Currently, we have 1 paid mechanic in the garage. The rest are inmate labor. The next is a curriculum specialist. And then the last is instructor development for our instructional staff to go around and get education themselves to bring back to the center. And then 39.10.9 is our largest request. It is a workload adjustment for the extension of basic mandate training. It's $6.1 million. And that, there'll probably be questions about the curriculum. The curriculum has not been decided on yet. That is based on a generic number to get us, it's a shot based on the best calculations we can make to get you that number. So.
And I've heard that new number, but it used to be, what, 410 hours?
So 411, and Mike can. 408, okay. 408, and then the adjustment now, they're talking about 800 hours, somewhere in that ballpark. But
So-
again, that number can change. That's not set in stone at this point.
So we talking about 20 weeks of school, something?
18 is
thereabouts?
what it's looking like,
18?
yes, sir.
Yeah. You get any feedback on that?
It's actually been very positive so far, even
Well, I
with
see it in a positive sense, but I know sometimes the
The-
cost and the time away from work can be irritating for some of the leadership.
Yeah, there is a committee comprised of 5 police chiefs and 5 sheriffs, and both of those associations are in support of extending the current training. And then the last is 39.10.10, and that is to transfer funds from the CJCC. So that's a grant that we've been given to do school resource officer training, de-escalation, and use of force training. So the ask is just to transfer that money into our budget, and that saves a lot of grant paperwork on both sides of the house from their agency and ours as well. And there is one more, 39.10.12, and that is a reduction of 1 instructor position of $62,500. And with that, that completes the.
What about your maintenance there? I know you worked hard on it the last couple of years, but at one time it was, it seemed like the other day it was built to me, but I know it's getting old and there was a lot of wear and tear. And
Yes, sir. There's a lot of, we got current bond projects that we're working on that y'all were gracious enough to provide for us last year. And then in the amended budget, y'all have added several features for upgrades at the center, and then also in this year, the 25 budget. So there are a lot of things. One of them is the main water line in the main academic building. That water line is still the current water line that was put in the early 80s. So it's time to upgrade some of the target systems and things. Overall, the center is in pretty good shape, but it is falling apart in pieces when it comes to infrastructure of water and sewer and those types of things.
But it stays full all the time, doesn't it?
It does, yes, sir. Our numbers, when I got there, we were hitting 60 to 70,000 students a year. That was counting in-person, regional academy, and online. In the last 3 years, we've hit over 300,000 students.
I appreciate what you do and the training that you do. Do you have any training in small pistol shooting yourself? Or does Aston show you? how to do that?
He is actually trying to do some remedial training to get me up to speed on his ability
So,
to shoot.
so he's better than you, or are you better than him, or
Well, maybe one day, but just not today.
not? No, all jokes aside, I do appreciate what y'all do there. Go through there a little training myself with corners for years, and y'all have done a great job. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
What does a corner need to know how to shoot somebody already dead?
We gotta make sure that.
Business is slow.
Well, I'll tell you what I've done. When I was the chairman of Public Safety and Homeland Security, we set up, a couple times, we've set up visits to different places that we're in the public safety arena, and it goes for us. I was talking to the chairman that took my place, and we were looking at maybe if to identify a couple places people might want to go to the YDCs. We've been down to Jackson to the prison, get to go over and go to the Public Safety Training Center and do the judgmental shooting or shoot a machine gun or get on the high. Huh? Yeah, I took a little lady that sat right across from me. It's about 60 years old. She got in that car and they took her around the track one time. She said, "That's enough for me. I want out." So she said, "I won't ever run from anybody." But if y'all think about it. If y'all want to do that, we get together with them and have a day when we can go down there and to any of the agencies that we deal with. I've taken them over to the crime lab and I think the day I was there, some of them were shocked at the morgue. They were doing 5 autopsies, and what really shocked them was that 4 of them were young people that were drug related, and they just overdosed, and it's kind of hard to stomach that when you let your whole life get away from you over drugs, but it made an impact on them. So. Okay.
All right, thank you.
No question. Thank you. One we've been waiting for. Well, almost. We got one more, but GMA Homeland Security. Okay. Another old trooper.
It is what it is, sir. I appreciate the committee today hearing us, and I want to jump through the first 4, but I don't want to skip over the first one. We're on page 13, section 27.7. Point 1, just like CJCC, I do appreciate the work of the committee. We're a federally funded agency for the majority of ours, but those raises are extremely important to our folks. But you stepping up and assisting us, and also with the work of OPB, and I gave him a shout out this morning, he missed it, but our fine analyst from OPB, Mr. Thompson, he has worked extremely well with us as well to ensure that the state has provided that funding to ensure our folks are given those raises. As you remember, we've been around a long time together, and we've all not seen these great days. We've had furlough days, and we've had those days where we didn't see raises for a long time. And so I appreciate the work of this committee and OPB ensuring that our folks got that. And so I just want you to know that. Jumping down to 27.7.5, utilizing existing funds, and you'll see some negated funds there. Those have been added back in through the same resources. What was those same conversations we had last year about recruitment and retention, and some of those disregards, they've come back in a different light. And so we would ask a favorable approval on 27.7.5, because that's going to allow us not only to have a whole agency, so when I say whole agency, our agency made whole financially, but the monies that we did have to hold back from those counties, we're going to be able to boost those totals back up to where they were. I know a lot of you probably received letters from some of your counties saying, "Hey, why is GMA holding back money from us?" And so you'll see here that we are able to restore those values back to those counties that we did hold back through our EMPG funding. And then the last line item, 27.7.6, is to increase funds to enhance our operations center. As we all know, during any activation, whether it be man-made or God-made, we have a duty to respond. And so we respond in that manner And so this here is to be annualized for a couple programs that we use, ESRI, which is our GIS platform, which allows us to do a lot of interaction with our locals as well, and then our Web EOC, which is where we do get our state resources and do our allocations and proper documentation. So that's where we stand, and so certainly on those 6 items total, we would ask this committee for your favorable consideration, sir.
And I think I may have asked you offline before, but what's the status of Homeland Security grants now? Do you receive any money or?
Yes, sir. We get those. As a matter of fact, I'll give you the exact number we got last year, which is down substantially. But last year, our Homeland Security grant program that we maintained at the state level was $3.497 million. Yes, sir. Unlike the $60 million you got back when you sat in this seat.
Well, it was right after 9/11, and it
Yes,
was
sir.
60 or 70 million every year. But
Yes, sir.
I figured, because I don't hear anything about it anymore, and
Well, we've gotten pretty inventive at how we do it, and we do a lot of relationships with the county. What's the ACCG?
the All Hazards Council.
Yes, sir. And so we work with them. So we do combination projects, or we utilize, we ask for groups. So if there's a couple, 3 or 4 counties together that have SWAT teams, we'll buy a nicer piece of equipment as long as they promise to use that and work together in those. So we pool our resources a little more efficiently.
And that's the way we did with
Yes, sir.
certain things that were expensive, like communications. The All Hazards Council for that area would buy one great big mobile communication center,
Yes,
and
sir.
everybody, and the agreement was there that everybody would use it when they had the need. So,
Yes, sir, that's correct.
but we bought a lot of equipment. Didn't anybody call on you?
Had a Lincoln or Maybach or something during those 67 million that time. 2 drivers and a Maybach. I heard it was good times, Doc.
Can't find it on the inventory list.
I know it.
Any questions? Okay, we appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
I love this committee.
Oh, yeah. Well, I didn't want to do it, but I have some ladies come sit in my office all the time, and they just harass and harangue me, and I finally agreed to allow them to come up here and talk. They're the Georgia Network to End Sexual Assault, and they wanted to. Well, I hadn't given my going away speech yet.
Well, thank you very much, Chairman Hitchens, and I will be very quick, and I appreciate your time and your time yesterday. My name is Jennifer Bivens, and I am actually a doctor of public health, and my specialty is in violence against women and girls. I actually run the Georgia Network to End Sexual Assault, which is our sexual assault coalition, and so I'm here to kind of do a little bit of more information with regards to what Director Neal had given you a little bit earlier with regards to sexual assault and sexual assault centers within Georgia. And so, like I said, he's talked budgetary information, like I said, but I've got a little bit more of a specific information with regards to the center. So the 8 centers that Director Neal was talking about, yeah, they would be actually funded for a SANE nurse. And those SANE nurses actually have to have 40 hours of didactic training as well as their clinical training. So again, that's a lot of training that those nurses have to have in order to be in the positions that they're in to provide those SANE exams. And so, like I said, so that funding, which we very much so appreciate that funding, again, would help to fund those positions. Within our victim services agencies for our sexual assault centers, that's 24-hour crisis lines that are available for victims, as well as in-person counseling, in-person advocacy, and any other needs that they have. Again, these centers across the state, these 30 centers would be able to provide that. Each center right now receives $54,209 per center. So that's not per staff, right, for staffing, but per center. So there's a lot of things that happen, and there was over 48,000 services that were provided this past fiscal year to those centers. For survivors through those centers. And so again, we are in need of funding in general, right, to make sure that there is a center for a SANE to be able to work at. So again, I just want to put that out there. But if you have any questions for me, like I said, I just kind of wanted to shore up that piece. And like I said, if you have any questions at all, I'd be more than happy to answer those.
And the other thing with those SANE nurses is a lot of people don't realize, but they're on call 24 hours a day.
Yes.
I mean, those kind of incidents don't happen at 2
Yes.
o'clock in the afternoon very
Right,
often. It's usually 2 o'clock in the morning, and
Yeah, right,
they have
yeah.
to get up and go. And
Right,
so.
right. So,
Chairman Werkheiser?
yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate you allowing them to come. I try to participate in everything. And I went to a sexual assault center in my area. It was in Hinesville, and kind of shocked. They were out in a kind of a rural area, but their not vacancy rate, their occupancy rate was over 80%, and that's with folks staying there less. I mean, it's a high turnover.
Right.
And so they're only there less than 2 weeks, and yet they're still full 80%. So I was disappointed that the federal government, in their infinite wisdom, did what they did, but that we were able to pick up. So thank you, Chairman, for that. And
Right.
thanks for the work
Yes,
that
sir.
y'all do.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Anything else you'd like to say?
Just thank you very much for your support. And like I said, we'll continue to do the work. And like I said, we appreciate that. I mean, we feel the support. I mean, we feel like, it's like I said, when we hear you guys on your committees talking, like whether they're through at the computer, or if they're here in person. But like I said, they really appreciate all the work that you guys are doing.
Well,
So
we
thank you.
appreciate you coming and making people aware. You know, we deal with a lot of things, and if you aren't aware of problems, you can't fix them. So,
Right, right.
And I'm very aware, since you all sit in my office all the time.
So, yes, sir, we do. Thank you very much.
Anybody on the committee got anything further they'd like to allow? If not, sir? I got about 50 cents in my pocket. Okay, we're adjourned.